Hello and welcome back. This is for section 2 on the electromagnetic waves with Miss Peak.
And extra bonus lag time. We watched the other video. We're sorry.
It's a little slower sometimes.
More like Godzilla. They see us talking and then the motions and stuff happen and it has nothing to do with what we're saying.
That's true.
Sad day.
So this is our second go around. We just recorded this
video with no audio. We are killing it today.
Which you guys would have probably enjoyed. We certainly did. But this time we'll just add the extra bonus of a little bit of sound to go along with it.
Yes.
So you can read the PowerPoints, but we're going to be talking about the electromagnetic spectrum and the complete range of the waves in order of increasing frequency. The more frequency, the more energy they have, the farther down the road they will be. So we're going to have 7 levels we'll be talking about today. One thing you need to know is that all of these travel at the same speed when they're traveling through a vacuum or traveling through space.
And that speed is going to be the speed of light, which is 3 times 10 to the 8 meters per second.
Wow, that's really moving. But they have different wavelengths and different frequencies. We'll be getting into more detail on these. Okay, a couple of main principles you need to keep in mind is that as the wavelength decreases or gets smaller, the frequency is going to increase, meaning it's going to go faster and faster and faster. So waves with the longest wavelengths
have the lowest frequencies or the lowest amount of energy.
And the waves with the shortest wavelengths have the
highest frequencies, which are going to have the highest amount of energy.
Yes, and the higher the frequency, the higher its energy. If
Keep
you have
that
it,
in mind.
We will talk about.
It will be a lovely picture demonstrating this.
Oh, that is pretty. As you notice, these 2 little red things are traveling at different frequencies, but they're traveling at the same speed. So as you see, the top wave has lots and lots of energy, whereas the lower one has less frequency and the bigger wave. So hopefully this illustrates what we're talking about as far as traveling at the same speed, even though one has a higher frequency and one has less frequency.
And here you can actually see the different waves on the electromagnetic spectrum, very, very large wavelengths with low energy, all the way up to these gamma rays, which have extremely high frequencies and lots of energy, but very, very, very small wavelengths. This is going to be one of the reasons why we said earlier that ultraviolet rays have high energy and high frequency and cause your photoelectric effect. And X-rays also have the energy to go through your skin, expose your skeleton and bones. That way we can see what's going on with you. And apparently gamma rays can turn you into a Hulk.
Hey, who do I see there, right in the middle? Is it Roy?
It is G. Biv, yes.
Yeah, that's Roy G. Biv. Now he's dressed nice today. Look at that coat of many colors that he's wearing.
I thought that was Joseph.
Oh, I guess it was. So that's okay. Just a little added bonus for you. So Roy G. Biv is red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet.
So those are going to be the colors, once again, in your visible light spectrum.
And that's going to be right in the middle. So if you can remember that when you are trying to memorize this particular chart, just know that the visible light is in the middle, and that's a great place to start from.
Absolutely.
So if we look at the lowest end of the spectrum with the lowest amount of energy and with the longest wavelength, we have radio waves. These are electromagnetic waves with very low frequencies, and these are used in broadcasting, such as
the one that you can see below, which isn't technically for broadcasting. It's going to be receiving signals, particularly from space. That's one of the reasons why it is literally so huge, is because that's how big the wavelengths and their amplitudes are to be received by this. This is the Arecibo telescope in Puerto Rico. And this past weekend, actually, a disaster happened, and it ended up breaking and collapsing in on itself, which was devastating for the people of Puerto Rico because much like our Statue of Liberty or Golden Gate Bridge, this was an iconic landmark for them. And many people are upset because there's a good chance, since this was a 50-year-old telescope, that they're never going to end up rebuilding this. And it was one of the top functioning telescopes to filter out and find these wavelengths. So you've got a couple videos that show the collapse and kind of let you see what it looked like in real time.
It seems like I've seen a big satellite like that on a James Bond movie.
You may be right. Would not surprise me.
But that looks familiar anyway. The next layer up are the microwaves. A lot of you have used a microwave, and yes, it uses microwaves in order to stimulate the particles inside your food to make them feel hot. These have shorter wavelengths and higher frequencies than radio waves, and they are used also in cell phones and radar.
Yes. So literally think about it, because it is a lower frequency and lower energy. This could also be the reason why sometimes the middle of your food, if you don't spread it out or separate it or stir it up well, is sometimes cold, because the microwaves don't have that energy to actually go all the way through everything and stimulate those water molecules that he was talking about.
Yes. And you have the rainbow hanging out right here on this. So this tells us that probably you're really going to need to know that cell phones use
microwaves and perhaps even radar as well.
Yes. And radar stands for
radio detection and ranging.
That's a good trivia question, because I've heard of radar for a long time but didn't really know what it stood for. So you can test your parents on that one. All right, the next layer on the electromagnetic spectrum that is not a very high energy would be the infrared rays. And when you talk about the infrared, I want you to think about that as heat. That can be like a heat signature. You may have seen this in movies such as Predator, or if you know someone that might be a hunter or maybe in the military that had a night vision goggles, you can actually see the heat signature on things, and that's the infrared rays, because those warmer objects will give off more infrared rays than the cooler ones. And that can be shown in a thermogram.
Such as this picture down here of our cute little Himalayan rabbit. So if you notice the ears and nose in particular, and a little bit with its little feetsies. So you can notice those areas are hotter and have a higher heat signature. And if you actually look at the rabbit in real life, you'll notice its nose, its ears, its feet, and even its little tail, they are much darker than its body in color. And that's because those areas are areas where heat is emitted, and you're going to experience more heat loss. And you can actually, if you breed these rabbits, kind of control a little bit what they look like based on the temperature that you bring them up in. This one would be raised in a much cooler environment. This one would kind of be in a middle-ish temperature. And with this one having the lightest coloration, it's going to be in the warmest environment. So I figured that was a little interesting fact to kind of let you see how these thermograms kind of play into some of the real world stuff.
We have a text coming in. Franklin's asking, Miss Peak, where can I buy one of those little rabbits?
I would probably wait till closer to Easter, and you could probably find plenty of people selling those left, right, and sideways, and maybe on Craigslist.
Well, that sounds good. Franklin, thank you for your participation. So right here, we have the middle of the spectrum. This is where Roy G. Biv hangs out. And if you're wondering about Roy G. Biv, that is red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. And think about red as having the lowest energy and the
violets having the highest.
Yes. Red. Wait a minute. We just talked about a layer of the spectrum
called infrared.
Hey, so red is beside infrared.
Correct.
Good. I can remember it that way.
And spoiler alert, violet is next to ultraviolet.
Wow. We'll keep that in mind for the next slide.
That we hopefully don't have to record again.
Yes. But this is made up of the colors of the rainbow. And you are lucky because most of you have an organ that can detect electromagnetic radiation that is in this category. And these are called your
eyes. And the cones and rods inside of them that pick up these electromagnetic waves. And whether you know it or not, there are some other animals and organisms whose eyes can actually pick up infrared radiation as well as ultraviolet. So we are not exactly the coolest set of eyes out there.
But it's neat that you have an organ that can detect some electromagnetic radiation. Mm-hmm. And as Miss Peak said, the next slide is
ultraviolet.
Okay, so ultraviolet, as Miss Peak had said, we would have a spoiler alert. because this goes right beside violet on the visible light spectrum. UV protection. That's something most of you have been putting on your bodies ever since you've been alive. Your parents are protecting you from the sunlight, and that is the ultraviolet radiation that can damage your skin cells.
Mm-hmm. Sunscreen may smell funny, but melanoma ain't cute. Hence the reason your teacher is quite as pale as she is.
And it helps produce vitamin D, which is good for you.
Yes, we need it to live and function. You can find it in certain foods like
milk,
or you can also buy it in a supplement. And since we just mentioned sunscreen, our picture over here is going to kind of be showing Earth's example of sunscreen, which is our ozone layer. And this blue part in the middle kind of sort of isn't supposed to be here because, again, we broke the ozone somehow. Just when you think humans can't get any more irresponsible with our planet, wait, there's more. And this hole in the ozone has been there for quite some time. However, it is starting to shrink up like it is managing to heal itself somehow. This is due to certain aerosols using CFCs or chlorofluorocarbons that damaged and attacked our ozone, but most of them have been outlawed.
Yes, once upon a time, we used to use hairspray that was an aerosol. It would really spray everywhere. Your parents or grandparents can tell you about those. And also some of our refrigerants have been changed. You know, hopefully those will be better. And perhaps one of you will be the scientist that finds a way to help heal this ozone layer.
Possibly.
Screen warning. If some images disturb you, please look away or at least look to the top of the screen. Oh, too late. X-rays are on the next layer up from the ultraviolet rays, not the violet. I'm thinking of violence when I think of these.
Pun not intended.
Yes. As you can see in the neck, it looks like a little pair of scissors. The second slide is a side view of that same thing. Hopefully this was maybe something left in surgery.
See, I'm torn. I don't know if I would rather them have swallowed it intentionally or someone unintentionally have closed them up with that in them. Either way hurts me to think about.
But since they are so dense, the scissors I'm talking about, they are very visible when we look at it with x-rays. Also, you can see it looks like a knife sticking in the top of the skull. And it looks like on the last slides,
about $1, $2, $3, $4, $5, $6, about $8 worth of pocket change.
Wow. Well, there you go again, adding math to science. But they go together. It just happens that way.
Whether you like it or not.
We see a couple of rainbows on this slide, so you are going to need to know that their high energy will allow them to penetrate most matter.
Absolutely.
One other thing, if you look at one of the middle slides, it looks like that the man with the knife in his head actually has glasses, but he doesn't.
Nope, I believe those are just his very large eyes.
Miss Peak has already told us that your eye sockets are that big. Can you imagine having eyes that big?
Oh my.
The better to see you with, my dear. And believe it or not, we go to the other end of the spectrum. We go to the high energy, the high frequency, and the very short wavelength gamma rays.
Yes, we've made it. These are the ones that you hear the least about, which is why I include a couple little videos down there in the bottom. So you can click on those and hear from some scientists at NASA about gamma radiation. The picture that shows the sun and Earth, we are actually being blasted and bombarded with this gamma radiation at all times, which our ozone and atmosphere thankfully again block and help protect us from most of this ultraviolet radiation. So we actually do end up getting most of this from exploding stars and things that you would never ever think of or experience on a day-to-day life.
Miss Peak, Brandon has chimed back in. I'm glad.
Oh.
Brandon, thank you for joining this second session. Brandon was also saying he's heard of gamma radiation on one of his favorite superheroes or a cartoon figure, the Hulk.
Yes, I believe we may have made mention of that before. Good for following along.
Thank you a lot, Brandon. You have been very good. And you just keep hanging out and be ready for that drawing. Sometimes we're used gamma radiation to see your internal organs. You know, hopefully, if anyone's ever looking at your internal organs, it's for a good reason and not for a bad.
But hopefully, if it's for good reason, they would use something a little more gentle than gamma radiation.
Yes. But these are the 7 layers of the electromagnetic spectrum. We are so thrilled that you were able to visit with us. We want you to know that we miss you very, very much.
It is not the same without you all
Nope.
here. And we appreciate you putting up with us and our lag time and our 3rd recording of the day.
And our not so great humor, but just know that we do that because we love you.
You guys have a good one, and we hope to see you soon. Thanks.
Bye-bye.